Good morning. That was pretty good for early in the morning. It's really good to see you all. My name is Ben Williams. I am a high school principal over near Cleveland. Is anybody anywhere in Ohio? All right, good deal. All right. Well, I'm really excited to be here this morning. I was asked to talk about technology, which I want to lay some ground rules for my conversation with you all. I feel like working with high school students in the couple of schools that I've been with and with Summit Ministries and things like that, when you guys hear that someone's going to talk to you about technology, you sort of assume for good reason that that person's going to slam on technology and is going to tell you about how cell phones are evil and all these kind of things. I just want you to know that is not my premise here this morning. I like technology. I think it's fantastic. I would even say, and this is maybe a big statement, I don't know that I think it is possible for us to live the way that Christ would have us live if we are not using technology. It's all about the way that we go about it, and it's about the kind of culture that we're setting up with it. And when I say I like it, some of my best memories as a child are from gifts that I had. How many of you have that Christmas present that stands out to you from your childhood as like the best present you ever got? Absolutely. Mine, so I was born in the 80s, which means that Stranger Things was my life, minus the Demogorgons. Stranger Things fans, anybody? I was born in the 80s. I have this vivid memory in elementary school of opening up a Christmas present, and it was the original Nintendo, the gray box, the 8-bit brick, and it changed my life. And I remember playing the Mario Brothers and the Duck Hunt and everything else. And then my friend got the N64, and we were playing James Bond and things like that. And then it just sort of progressed. And I have two kids now. I have a soon-to-be 9-year-old and I have a 6-year-old. And as I watch them navigate the world, they are also trying to make sense of these things that are coming at them, the games and the tools and the phones and kind of everything else. And this stood out to me in really significant ways with my son. When he was about 4, my mom sent him this present. And how many of you have seen Toy Story? Okay. You know the telephone in Toy Story? It's got the red handle and that kind of thing. So she sends him this telephone. And I got very excited about this because this was also one of my favorite toys when I was a kid. And he pulled it out of the box and he put it on the floor. And I said, "Hey, what do you think?" And he stood up and he started walking around it. And I realized in that moment that he had absolutely no idea what this was. And I said, "Hey, buddy, what do you think that is?" And he goes, I don't know. And I said, "Well, take a guess." And so he walked around it a couple of more times, then he sat down beside it, and it has wheels on it. And he went, and I realized that he thought this was a truck. And then it dawned on me, he had never seen a phone with a cord on it before. And he had never seen a phone with a rotary dial on it before. The only phone he had ever known was this. And it occurred to me that in the amount of time, from the time that I was his age, and from the time that I had him, just how radically the world has changed. And just how much technology has changed. Think back to your grandparents. When your grandparents were kids, they were not sending emails. They were writing letters. And if they were going to make a phone call from one state to the other, there was long-distance charges that went into it. And it was a very quick, "Hey, how are you? I love you. I have to go. Hang up, $25 charge." And when they were your age, they were driving to things and they were going to movies, but if you missed the movie, you might not ever see that movie again because you couldn't go rent it at a store. You couldn't download it off of anything. You couldn't stream it off of Netflix. It was a completely different way of entertainment. It was a completely different way of organizing the way that we think about tech. When we start talking about technology, I feel like we need to get a good definition. I actually want to back up just a little bit more broadly even before we go there. Okay, let's talk about culture. Culture is a big word, and there's a lot of definitions floating around there. So here in just a few seconds, I'm going to have you get with two people right beside you, and I want you to jot down a basic definition of culture. I'm going to give you maybe 10 seconds to do this. So two people right next to you, definition of culture, and then I'm going to have a few of them read them out to me. Ready? On the count of, when we get to 1, 3, 2, 1, go. About 5 seconds. Definition of culture. Three, 2, 1. All right, now you're gonna have to speak loudly, but I need a couple of volunteers who just want to stand up and read me your definition right here. What do you got? Okay, so it's a way of living in your world and how you perceive the world. Somebody else, that's a good definition. Very back, stand up and yell for me. Yeah. Spreading/sharing of ideas. That's an interesting one. All right, give me another one. Right here. Okay, so traditions, family, what did you say? Religions and externalizing. All right, somebody's read Peter Berger. Very good. Very back. Young lady, yep, you're pointing at your head. Good, stand up. No, I can't hear you. You got to stand up. How people in this society interact with each other and themselves. These are great definitions, you guys. Really, really good. Let's boil it down even further, right? So based on those definitions, give me examples of culture that you see on a regular basis. What are examples of culture? What? Yeah, right over here. Yeah. Different types of music. Absolutely. Country fans in here? I'll pray for you. Give me another example. Another example of culture, yeah. Say it again. Religion. Different religions are married with cultures, absolutely. Over here, far side, yep. Movies, absolutely, absolutely. How many of you have seen a movie in the last week? How many of you have seen a movie in the last day? How many of you have seen a movie in the last 6 hours? And that's what you were doing last night. All right, good. Over here, example of culture. Say it again. Art. Art is absolutely. Any artists in here? You paint, you draw, you do ceramics, absolutely. Some of you skip your other classes to go to the art room. We'll talk about that later. Culture, and write this down for me. Culture is my definition. It's not actually mine. This guy named Andy Crouch wrote a book called Culture Making. He says, quite simply, and here's the quote, culture is whatever humans make of the world. Culture is whatever humans make of the world. Culture happens anytime that we take raw resources and we turn them into something else. And those things that we are making, they say things about us. They tell us something about what it is that we value. So certain types of music explore certain types of themes. Country music, it's a lot of dogs and pickup trucks and things like that. I grew up in Texas. I feel free to make jokes. Okay. Certain types of art, they explore things, whether it's going to be the Andy Warhol approach of sort of chaos and everything else, or whether it's going to be a Monet or a Rembrandt or something like that. Different types of clothing even. You chose to wear certain types of clothing today because it says something about who you are, or because your administrator gave you a dress code, okay? And I'm one of those. You wear clothes the way you wear clothes to say things about what you value. The kind of food that we make in certain cultures says something about what we value. The way that we eat dinner says something about what we value. Some of your families have dinners together where you sit around a table and you share and you talk. Some of your families do it in sort of pieces and piecemeal over the week where you're meeting with different people and connecting with different people. There's lots of ways that we do it, but the way that we arrange our time develops a type of culture within our family as well. Okay? Now, this is always the case. Technology, on the other hand, and here's my definition of technology. Technology is whatever tool we use to make culture. Technology is whatever tool we use to make culture. So if we're going to use that kind of definition, all of you have technology today. Now, you would all typically hold up your cell phones, yes, but how many of you are writing with a pen or a pencil right now? That's a technology. It's actually an earth-shaking technology. Because before that, you would have had to carry around chisels and stones and things like that, and that gets awkward. Okay? Pencils and pens shaped the way that we think about our modern world. How many of you drove here in a bus or in a car or something like that? Cars, vehicles like that are definitely forms of technology. Planes are mind-blowing pieces of technology. Okay? They're tools. They're things that we have created in order to allow our culture to be about certain things. And this has always been the case. How many of you know what I mean when I say the Roman Colosseum? Okay? You've all seen pictures of that. It's a big building with the arches and everything else. Somebody tell me, what did they do in the Colosseum? What was it for? Yeah, right here. Oh, okay, they did kill Christians. That's true. Yes, you're right. It's pretty morbid too, but it's a Christian setting, so we'll move on. Yes, right here. Okay, there were gladiators. Some of you, how many of you saw the movie? Russell Crowe, okay. It's old at this point. Okay, so we had gladiatorial events. What else did they do? What else were they doing? Yeah. Say it again. Theater, absolutely. Yep, it was theater. Now, and they had civic meetings and kind of everything else. What's cool about the Colosseum is, yes, they did have gladiatorial events. Yes, they did martyr Christians and a variety of other people in that building. But it was an unbelievably technologically advanced building. It wasn't just that they had a pit they would put people in to fight. They could flood it up to a certain point and put ships in there and do mock sea battles for the crowds. They had stages that they could open up into waiting areas and dressing rooms below where they could put things together and then rise them up. They had machines, these God machines that Aristotle talks about, the Deus Ex Machina, where they would fly characters out over the crowd and over the stage, and they would do things within the theater environment. And it wasn't just that. The way that the building was constructed, those archways, they're cool to look at, but they also force the air to flow in certain ways. It was ancient air conditioning, more or less. It was supposed to cool down the area. And then the coolest thing that archaeologists have been talking about, at least I think is the coolest thing, in the corridors, they had machines where you could take Roman coins and put them in and pull levers and get food out. They had vending machines, people. That's awesome. Tell me what it is that Rome cared about. What did they value based on the fact that they took all of those raw resources and put them into that building? What did they care about? Somebody raise your hand for me. Very back. Yell it for me. Pleasing the people, is that what you said? Yep, pleasing the people, absolutely, yes. Entertainment, how many of you would agree with that? Absolutely. And that's Roman culture in a nutshell by the time we get to the end of it. It's entertainment is the core value of their culture. Okay. Now, they put all of their resources into developing a culture that is about entertainment. We do different things. Now, we could make a case that our culture is mostly about entertainment as well. I'm going to take a sidestep real fast. When you drive around, you see all these traffic lights. Right? And they're all over the place. There are different intersections. Your city sort of becomes a big deal when you finally get a traffic light. I was in a really small Texas town. We were very excited when we finally got one. There was a party out by it. We'll move on. Let's say that 400 years from now, I don't know why, there's been an apocalypse. The United States is over. The entire area has been covered over in sand. It's very sad. And Europe, because somehow they survived, has sent archaeologists over, and they start digging down through the sand. And all of a sudden, they start finding hundreds of thousands of stoplights. Right? What is it that they know our culture cares about based on the fact that we have really millions of stoplights? Over here, what do we care about? Safety. We care about safety. What else do we care about? Yeah. Order. We care about order. What else do we care about? Yeah. Going. We care about mobility and transportation. And we care about the ability to go where I want to go, where you want to go, when you want to do it. Because we didn't invest in a major national bus system here in this country. We invested in highway systems, and we invested in small county roads because we value the ability to be individuals in our traveling. Does that make sense? Okay. We use our technology in this country to create the culture that we want. What's interesting about this is, and Winston Churchill said it like this, he said, first we create the buildings and then the buildings create us. Okay. Now that's true with everything. First we made the roads and then the roads in turn made us. They started shaping the way that we think about travel and people and relationships. Okay. I live in Ohio now, my family lives in Texas. We made phones and then the phones to a degree made us. It's not a big deal for me to live in a completely different state. I can call whenever I want. I can get on a plane and get home way quicker than I used to be able to. Does that make sense? Okay. Our technology shapes us in significant ways. Now, here's the thing. This is about the point where I feel like as Christians we start saying, and that's bad. Our technology has shaped us in all of these really negative ways. And that's true, quite frankly. For all of the good things that we can point at for our cell phones and the internet and kind of everything else that has happened over the last 20, 30 years, there's a lot of terrible stuff. There's the boom in human trafficking made possible because of our technology. There's the fragmentation of our societies and our communities partially because of the way that ideas are shaped and moved around in our country. It used to be that when I got off the bus, and I know it will shock you to learn that I was the kid that got bullied, but I used to be that when I got off the bus, the bullying ended until I went back to school the next day. Now with you guys, it follows you into your bedroom on your cell phone. Does that make sense? You guys grew up with a Netflix series like 13 Reasons Why. That wasn't even a possibility when I was a kid. Are you with me? Okay. Now, yes, there are some really negative things that you guys are having to navigate. I will say this, though. That's not your fault. That's my generation's fault. And that's our parents' generation's fault. They built the culture that we live in, and now you are the inheritor of it. Does that make sense? Okay. That does not let you off the hook, though. I know that's what you'd all like. It doesn't let you off the hook. What it says is you're no different than the rest of the human race, than the rest of human history. You grow up and you inherit a culture from your previous generations, and it is up to you to shape it. Okay. If you have your Bibles, I want you to look at Genesis 1, actually. Genesis 1, verse 26. And God blessed them. Nope, let's start in 27. It said, so God created man in his own image, and in the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said, and then be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the ground. And then we typically stop there. Right? That next couple of verses is equally important. And God said, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that's on the face of the earth, and every tree with a seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth and every bird of the heaven, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I've given to you. Okay? Here's the thing. God didn't make humanity and just plop them in a garden and tell them to run around for all of eternity. He created humanity. He put them in an example culture. And he said, go make the rest of the world like this. And when you read the text, it's an untamed wilderness. It needs to be subdued. It needs to be mowed, as one of my friends says. It needs to be shaped and formed. And here's the thing, if the fall had never happened, I really think we still would have done a lot of the stuff that we do today. We still would have needed farmers to grow the food, which means we would have needed industry to create tools for them. We still would have had teachers to teach the rising generations of children about who God is, along with their parents, and about what it is that God wants to be done and the tools that they need to shape it. We still would have had musicians, because music is an expression of the way that we experience the beauty of God. We still would have had roads to get from place to place. I think we still would have had cities that would have been arranged in better ways, that would have been set up in ways that were going to adequately and accurately reflect who God is and what the kingdom of God is supposed to be. The world that we have today is a dim, warped reflection of the world as it was always supposed to be. And what that means is that when Jesus says, go into all of the earth and make disciples, he is not just saying, go pray for the souls of the people who are lost. He is actually saying, go train people to live the way that we were always supposed to live. And what that means, at least partially, is that humans were always supposed to live in a way that would cause us to create culture. Okay? And we were supposed to create the culture that was going to be deeply reflective of who God is. We were always going to generate technology. We were going to use it in radically different ways. Now, all of you in here have been asked to come. You're student leaders, and I work with student leaders in my school every day. And one of the things that we talk about a lot at my school is that being a student leader is not just holding a title for your resume so you get into a better college. And being a student leader is not just winning a popularity contest, because let's be honest, that's most of what those elections are. Okay? Being a student leader means that you, each and every one of you, have been tasked with shaping and building the culture of your school. Which means that you, in a very clear way, quite frankly, are just supposed to be doing what humans have always been called to do, but that we fail to do so often. Are you with me? Okay. This means that the tools at your disposal, the technology at your disposal, you have to use those things in ways that reintegrate people into meaningful relationships, that reaffirm the worth of every individual person as bearing the image of God. You have to use the tools at your disposal. You have to use the technology that you have to not simply accept the culture that you have been given, but to reshape it and introduce a better one. One that really deeply shows people who Jesus is. Are you with me? I'm going to give you concretes, right? Because a lot of this stuff, it's big and it's out there. Just a couple of concrete things. I have seen this done in so many good ways at my school and at other schools that I have worked with. I had a math teacher. Her name is Kelsey a couple of years ago. And Kelsey just really deeply cared about the idea that math shouldn't just be numbers. She was an art major also, and that's weird. But she would integrate art into her math classes, and then she would help people explore the beauty of that math and the way that it causes us to understand the way the world works and the way that we work together. And then she was always pushing back to math is also relationship forming. It is also part of how we as Christians come into contact with other people and understand the world and therefore build better relationships. For the students, she would do this thing maybe every couple of weeks where she would take 10 minutes out of one of her classes and the students would take Post-its and they would write things that they really appreciated about different people on campus and ways that they had seen God move in their life. And then she would take them out and she would slap them all over the classroom door of that teacher, all over the locker of that student. That happened to me one time on a really, really bad day, and it was huge for me in reorienting my place, reminding me of who it is that God had made me to be. You guys can do things like that. I just started working at a new school near Cleveland, and the very first week, I had other students on their own come into school one morning before anybody else got there, and they wrote encouraging notes. It was a couple of girls wrote encouraging notes to every single girl in the school. And it wasn't just the, hey, your hair looks really nice today kind of thing. It was, here are things that I know to be true about you. Couple of sentences. Here's how I think God has shaped you. I have seen students jump online in the middle of some really nasty things going on social media and start redirecting the conversation. This isn't true, and this is not Christ-honoring. We need to not be about these things. Here's what is true about this. I have seen students pull together and have meetings about things that have happened in the school that could be better, that needed to be better. And they did hashtags and tweets and everything else to get people into the room. My school did this thing a couple of years ago. For a couple of times over the course of the year, we did movie nights for the elementary kids. And the high school students, some of them came in, and we watched movies together. And so we watched the Lego movie back when that was cool. And we watched WALL-E probably way after it was cool. And we would sit there with the elementary kids and their parents, and we would watch the film, and we would eat popcorn, and then we passed out questions, and we had community building time where they were talking to each other about the movie. What did that mean? What did we like? What is it that we think about this? What are messages coming out of it? We use the technology in a way to reintegrate family relationships, to reinforce what it is that is really healthy and good in the kingdom of God. Are you with me? Okay. You guys have been given this unbelievable task for a few years to lead your student body. My challenge to you is that because of the time you spend here, because of the dedication of your administrators and your teachers who are willing to help you, you guys lean into that. You have to lean into this. It's part of how you were made. It is part of what you were always called to. You have been given this incredible opportunity for a few years to shape a culture. And my question for you is, what kind of culture is it that you're going to make? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben. Really appreciate all your thoughts here on culture. What we're going to do is going to take a few moments to remind you guys that we have an opportunity to ask Ben all kinds of questions with regard to technology and culture, really, the intersection of technology and culture. So, Ben, while they're kind of texting in some questions, remember, it's on Twitter. Make sure you hit the little tweet thing, because you know what Twitter means in Latin, right? Bird. So, make sure that you got that. That's good.
I really changed my life.
This is pure etymology going on here. So, and it is Reconnect 17. Thanks for your thoughts on culture. One of the big things I always struggle with is, you know, I always envision, I think of how God made us. And kind of this, I don't want to be all, well, I guess we're all smart people here. Some etymological part of, like, the fact that God made us natural, you know. And then when I think of technology, particularly when I think of cyber technology or anything that involves going online or, you know, like getting glued to your phone, I always think of that in a very negative way, you know what I mean? So help us understand, and particularly maybe some of the teachers even in this room, because we live we're straddling the two generations, you know, where I think it's native for a lot of young people who are just like on their phone, and they don't see on their phone as necessarily a negative thing. So what's kind of like the dividing line between what's natural, the way God's made us, and the way that technology takes us into this world of being online somewhere?
Yeah, so let me see if I'm following your question. If not, tell me to shut up.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll redirect. I guess part of what I think is interesting, and this is true for me as well, I think that our generation and the older generation of teachers and parents, there's a blind spot for all of us there in terms of how all of it works and why we would want it even to some degree. Mm-hmm. And so for us, I think technology still has a little bit of fear attached to it. Mm-hmm. We're not quite sure what to do with all of it. Mm-hmm. For this generation, like you said, native, they've never known a world without it. Mm-hmm. And so their blind spot is it's the implications of all of it. And so when we talk about that dividing line between the way God made us and the way that we are encouraged to be in our culture, I don't know that I think it's all that different than when the first time the printing press showed up. Mm-hmm. But it's hard. I think it's hard for you guys to navigate how you think about yourselves. Is something funny up there? Yes, I got chased by an angry. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. Completely threw me off.
Technology,
it's distracting, it's evil.
See,
put
where
your
I'm
phones
getting
away.
at is this. So, for example, okay, you know, we talk about the printing press.
Yeah.
Gutenberg never missed dinner because he was sucked into the printing press.
Sure,
you know what I mean? Like there was always an opportunity to be like, "Yo, Gutenberg, get over here," you know, that kind of thing. But for the rest of us, it's kind of like I will sometimes see people that I love and care for be like, and it looks like they're just going in it. You know, they're like halfway in cyber sphere somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, and that's true for me as well. Mm-hmm. What I would say is that the solution to that is not talking about that technology as though it is evil. The solution to that is recognizing that technology is not a means to an end, and that it is a tool that we have to learn for its proper place, right? It's just like, how many of you drive now and you have your own cars? Right. Some of you, and I remember when I got my first car, I was really tempted to eat in my car and sleep in my car and never leave my car, but because it was such a cool new part of who I am. No, it was a cool thing that I had.
I was going to say, you thought it was. Okay.
I thought it was. That's right.
Everybody else was like, that smells like a gym. That's horrible.
That's exactly right. Anything that is new, we have a tendency to overemphasize it, okay? Even though it's not new to you guys, it's still new to our culture, and so it's cool. I think that what you all have to do, and this is true for me, what we all have to do, is we have to figure out where that place is within our relationships. And I would say this, my family has a rule, once we go to dinner, we put the phones down, which is hard for me. And my kids will tell you I'm a little bit overly attached to my phone. Right? But we have boundaries there. When I go into meetings with people, I put my phone face down silent so that at least they know that I'm talking to them. Mm-hmm. I think little steps like that help put it in its proper place. And I think that's important. It's etiquette that we don't have yet as a culture.
Sure. Sure.
Is that what you were
brings
asking?
Rodney brings up a really good point. I'm going to switch. We're just going to go. Bam, bam, bam,
let's do
bam.
it.
All these questions. Get as many as we can. Rodney brings up a good point. He says, how can one student change a culture? How can you help them understand the definition of culture as to not be, this monolithic thing? Like, now I'm going to get on TV and change everything. What,
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Yep. So culture, and again, culture is whatever we make, period. So culture does not have to be I need to go back to my school and make sure that nobody ever tells a bad joke ever again, and that will be when I know I succeeded, because that's never going to happen, right? Culture is simply pick one area, and what are you going to do about it? Maybe it's the tenor of the locker room. Maybe it's how are we interacting with each other in the hallways. Maybe it is simply you and your peer group and what you choose to talk about and what you choose to retweet and hashtag and like and whatever it is. It's take a little piece of the world around you and reshape it. It doesn't need to be a big deal. And Brett, do we still talk BHAGs here? Is that a thing? Yeah, a little bit. Not really. Sorry.
We're not into all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you can have a big, hairy, audacious goal.
There you go.
That's really out there and really massive, and that's just as good as the small one that helps one person reconnect with the world around them and with the way that Christ intended them to be.
So, a couple questions are coming up here, and it's a really good question. So why aren't we talking about the negative aspects of technology? For example, how is it being used in a nefarious way? Like, are there spiritual elements behind the use of technology, and is that getting us to take our eyes off of Christ and pursue things that are ungodly?
Sure. Well, and I will hesitate to say that there are specifically spiritual elements behind one specific form of technology, though obviously there's going to be spiritual elements behind everything. What I would say
anything Android is evil. So.
And I'm an Android fan, so I hate you now.
Yeah, You're not going to win the MacBook, okay? He's not winning the MacBook.
It's all right, I've got one.
Just saying. Wait, what'd you say?
I have a MacBook. I just have an Android phone.
Oh, you already have
I'm a hypocrite. What was the question?
Rich.
Spirits and yes.
No idea,
Okay,
yeah.
so here's what I would say, right? The ways that technology is used to accomplish evil ends is because of broken, sinful people that we need redemption and we need sanctification. And so when I look at that, ships were used both to carry food and to carry slaves, all throughout the slave trade of the 17 and 1800s in particular. It doesn't mean that we stop using ships. It means that we have to understand that anytime there's a technology, it's going to be used for evil. And therefore, as Christians, we have to learn how is it that we engage that well and reshape it, take it back, and understand ways that it actually can reflect the kingdom of God. Now, I would say this. There are versions of any given technology that simply I don't think can be redeemed and need to be destroyed. Let me give you an example. You guys are going to have a conversation about sexuality and pornography this afternoon. Pornography is not something that can be redeemed. Pornography is at its core a warped twisting of art and of print and of the way that we see people. And so in situations like that, it takes our Christian discernment to understand this simply needs to end versus this has to be reshaped. And I would say this, it can't just be you deciding that something is fine or something isn't. This is where we need our parents and the church to come alongside and reshape the way that we think about the world around us.
So Tyler brings up a real practical question. He says, does your school, because you're principal, right? Does your school allow you to use phones during the school day?
So we do, but not during class time. And we're a bit of a unique situation. So we have a one-to-one program going on. So all of my 7th through 8th graders, I'm regretting the 7th graders, have a laptop. And we are using that in our classrooms. We have procedures that we have tried to build in where at different points in the class period, the teacher is able to cue people for how the screen should be. And so as a result of that, we don't use cell phones in the classroom because we don't need them. Now, what my students are allowed to do, and I'm okay with this, that once the bell rings and they have exited the classroom and they're in the hallways, they can use those. They can use their phones. They can use them at lunch. They can, those kind of things. But I reserve the right as the principal, and the teachers reserve the right as well, that if at any point we really feel like that technology is hindering someone's relationship with another person, we can take it. So if I walk by at a lunch table and I've got a bunch of people sitting around playing I don't know, whatever, Clash of Clans or whatever, I can walk by and pick up their phones at any given point and say, talk to each other, your people, and reinforce like that. So it's a yes, but we're trying to train in the process.
Sure. Nate brings up an interesting question. Probably going to put you on the spot here a little bit, but, hey, you're a smart guy.
So, sure.
There you go. He's starting to sweat already. So what are some biblical examples of good uses of technology?
Yeah, no, that's a great example. So obviously no cell phones. But when you look through the Old Testament, in fact, there's a book. It's called Art in the Bible. Write it down. It's by a guy named Francis Schaeffer. It's Art in the Bible is phenomenal. And so really what that book is, even though it's called Art in the Bible, it's an exploration of technology in the Bible. So when you're looking down through the entire way that Solomon's temple is constructed, it's this incredible use of tech, both the building materials and the engineering, and then also the artists and the way that they came in and they overlaid items and they made tapestries and they did just a variety of things. You see that kind of all the way through. You see David and the way that he's using musical instruments. You see Jesus and his disciples and the way that Jesus is learning carpentry. That's a form of technology and shaping of the world. We see it with the disciples and the fishing and everything else. And you kind of see it all over the place. We just don't see it when we read it because we're so primed to look at the quote-unquote high-tech digital technology.
Right.
They didn't
Take
have
my
those
yoke
things.
upon you. There
Is
you go.
tech. There you go.
Yoke is tech.
Yep.
That's a quote right there. Yoke is tech. You leave here
Tweet
today,
that.
yoke is tech,
Yeah.
all right? And be like, what did you learn there? What was?
That's
Well,
right.
thank you so
Hey,
much,
thank
Ben,
you. I
for being
appreciate
here.
it.
Really appreciate it. Let's hear it for Ben.